Hello, everyone. It's Mr. Barden here, although you can't really see me. I had a little camera malfunction, unfortunately, so rather than postpone the video because I need to have it ready for other teachers coming out, I'm going to go along with it, and you just won't be able to see me, unfortunately. This video is part of the teacher's edition of the Programming Digital Media course, wherein I'm going over a lot of the same material from the main course, but with hopefully helpful comments and hints and tips for the teachers of this course. So if you're not a teacher, I recommend checking out some of the other videos I have both on my channel and just as YouTube as a whole, as those may be a little bit more of what you're looking for. That being said, you may still learn something. So if you enjoy the video, you learn something, definitely give it a like, maybe subscribe, all the boring YouTube stuff. But if there's anything I go over that doesn't quite make sense or you want a little further explanation, put that down in the comments below. At the very least, I read all the comments and respond when I can. And if there's anything that you specifically would like me to go over and cover in a separate video, also put those down in the comments below. I'm putting together a playlist of kind of user suggested videos and topics, so that way, if there's anything the community wants to see, it'll eventually get made right there. With that being said, let's just jump into it. So, I've got a sketch up here, and I'm going to start by making just a new title for it. Um, there we go. This is going to be going over the first two lessons here in the graphics section. The little chapter for drawing and shapes. So I just want to clarify that this is here in this section because we are, this is all about graphics and creating, well, images on the screen. And we start off really basic, just with basic shapes and colors. Now, we do a lot of this in the intro unit. So I tend to hop into here periodically, specifically with these two lessons that I'm going to go over today, as well as sometimes the nested conditionals. I'll jump back and forth to and talk about while we're in this first unit. But that really just kind of depends on the class and how good they feel. But basically, that's the reason these are here. I didn't pick the order. I just filled out the pages on the webpage. So I personally would have probably moved these up towards the first unit, just because a lot of what we do to show the concepts here is with basic shapes and moving around and working with them like that. So on the screen right now, I have the five kind of basic shapes. Uh, we've already talked about a few of them. That's the ellipse, rectangle, triangle, and line. I'm not going to go over them in a lot of detail, but you can kind of see I've kind of broken them up here on the screen. So, basically I've broken out what each of the arguments are. Um, and then just kind of as we go, and then kind of boom, any helpful elements right here. So I definitely make sure my students um, check this out as we go along. Again, I'm not going to go through each of these. The one that is different and also has the most little bullet points is the arc. And we have not actually gone over the arc yet, but it will be something that we need for the graphics assignment down here. And I'll have a separate video where I go through a good chunk of the graphics material that should come out in a day or two from the time this one comes out. So basically, to make an arc is just a portion of a circle. It requires six arguments, just like the triangle, only they are different things. And that's the X and Y location of your shape's center, the width and height of the shape, just like an ellipse. And then we have the start and end of the perimeter of the shape. So let's just hop in and make one really quick. So to do that, we have to do a few things. The first, this isn't necessary, but in setup, I tend to go to angle mode degrees. And I add this line first thing as soon as I know I'm going to be dealing with an arc. The reason for this is because um, by default, P5 measures angles using radians. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just another measuring system. However, in my mind, and I tend to see this also in my students, it's easier to visualize and plan building it around the 360 degrees of a circle rather than the however many pi radians over 4. We don't have to start typing out a bunch of weird fractions and uh, other constants and things like that. We can just give it a number and it all works. Um, so again, by default, the angle mode is radians, so you have to add in angle mode to the setup function in order to set that to degrees. And you can just type out the word degrees in all capitals. You'll notice it turns pink once you've got the right word there. Okay. So again, if your students' arcs aren't coming out how they're expecting them to, that's probably what the problem is. Um, to make an arc, again, it's the function is called arc. Um, it's the location of the the x coordinate of the center, the y coordinate of the center, the overall width and height. So you can have arcs that are ovals and portions of ovals. In fact, I think I've got one down here in the let's practice. Actually, I don't. These are both circles, uh, but it works just the same way. If I went down to where we're making the arc and instead made something 150, you see that it's still the arc, but it's a lot wider in one direction. It's no longer a circle. Um, but we go there, and so once you've got the XY width and height, I'll just um, you have to have both of these. You can't skip one. Like sometimes you can skip the last argument of an ellipse if you know it's going to be a circle. But you have to have all six here. So let's just say 0, 360, and there it is. This is a very longhand way of making a circle, but if you know that you're gonna have it changed, um, this could be something you would want to do. So let me just add a color there. I'll just pick something simple. There we are. So we've got this ellipse right here, and as we change this, maybe instead of having it start at 0 degrees, maybe it's at 50 degrees. Boop. And we starts there. So this is kind of important, and it's a little weird in my opinion, and it takes my students just a little while to kind of get the grasp on this before moving on. And that is that 0 degrees here, and as far as the browser's concerned in P5 and all that, is this from the center, it is going horizontally, parallel with the bottom of the screen to the right. All right, this is 0 degrees or 360. They're the same degree, and then it increases by going clockwise around. So this is now 50 degrees here. If I changed it to 90, it would be exactly on the bottom. Here's 360, and so on. So if we wanted to get like a Pac-Man shape, because that's coming up, you have to kind of think, okay, where are we going? So I know for a fact that it's going to be approximately 200 and approximately 120. I'm just kind of picking some numbers. Again, trying to work out exactly those proportions. And again, the first one is where the arc starts. The second one is as it moves clockwise around where it stops. So you could have it, um, like so with 200 to 120, where the smaller number comes second. We could change that to 120, 200, and you'll get the opposite where it fills 120 and then it stops at 200 to have a very small shape. That's pretty much it. It's relatively straightforward. It just takes some practice. So I usually have my students make a handful of these shapes. But there's another argument we can add right here. Um, where did it go on my screen? There it is. By default, the arcs are open, meaning like you'll see here, it fills in the, or I'll show here. It kind of, it fills into the center, but you notice that the perimeter stops right there. So we can actually change how that behaves. So with a last argument of, you could maybe say pi, and that basically just fills in from the edges of our shapes to the center. It gives it an entire border around it, kind of like I'm gonna make this a little bigger just to see. There we go. Kind of like a pie chart. I mean, not quite that big. There we go. So we have that there. We can also, again, open. That's open is it just kind of fills in from point to point, like so. So you notice it no longer goes to the center of what would be a circle, that these first 2 points that you give it. The shape fill no longer goes there. It just connects in a straight line between your two endpoints. I think we have close. That's not a thing for this shape, but I know we have chord is the other one. And it, again, fills it in with the parameter. So there's several options, pi, chord, open. You can set it up for however you want to view it. I'm gonna leave it at open. There we are, just for now. Uh, and that's essentially the main parts of an arc. You can use it to combine different things. You could, heck, we could even be, let's 0 articles. I don't know, something you can get and have it change and update how much is being drawn at once. Um, in this particular one, it's a very, very basic kind of clock. So maybe instead of here, I could set it to 245 to 75. 270. I can't. I didn't remember what my angles were. There we are. So now it kind of fills in like a clock, and you can kind of work out some bits like that. I think it 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it's like 6 seconds with this particular. But you can work out whatever you need and have your shapes update and change just like any of the other ones. So again, I kind of give my students this code, and maybe I'll have them recreate this as an image, just experiment with the different shapes, just get some practice with that. Uh, the outlines. So by default, you'll notice that there's again a thin black outline around all of our shapes. We can adjust um, the properties of that with the stroke function. So by default, stroke. This will set the color. So maybe I want it to be, 255. That'll be a white outline. I can kind of grayscale it between white and black. It's kind of however you want to set it up, but you can set whatever color um, to the stroke that you want. That's not a very big one. Green. And we can kind of see that. Lime green and There, now we can definitely tell those apart. Um, and you can set the color of the stroke just like the fill. All the same things kind of uh, translate there. There's also a function called stroke weight, and this is the thickness of the line. So maybe 10 pixels, and that makes a very big um, outline right there. So your students can set this, and get whatever you want. I kind of like the thicker strokes in some instances. I think it can add character, but again, it has to be kind of planned out. Um, However you might want it. Just don't add them just for fun. But again, students may get confused by trying to change the stroke weight, but calling the stroke function. Again, I like to think of it as if you've ever like written with a fountain pen or something, and you put a lot of weight on the pen, it draws a thicker line. And I'm oversimplifying just a little bit, but that kind of idea, to make a thicker line, you put more weight on the pen or the pencil, whatever you're using. Um, we have that there. We can also do a function called, instead of stroke, we can say, I'll just get rid of where we changed the color. We can say no stroke. And this removes the outline from shapes. So again, that can be useful, and that's definitely all things that we need to look at for those graphics assignments coming up. Now, one thing that is important, and my students will get confused all the time, and I mean, I occasionally get confused if I'm at a practice on this, is um, going back to the line function. So we've been setting the color of shapes with fill. That's great and all, but with a line specifically, I don't have any on this bit right here, but a line shape, um, it's just a single, you know, pixel wide. It is a line, so you can affect it with that stroke and stroke weight functions, and that will affect the line um, by itself. And so just to illustrate that, if I said line, and I'm just gonna do a real basic one. Width, height. But because we have no stroke here, we don't see the line because the line is a stroke. If I take that out, now we can see it. If I bring back the stroke weight, it makes this line bigger as well. As I adjust the stroke color, it affects our lines because the lines are a stroke. So, if you want to have difference between a line on the canvas and an outline on the shape, you'll have to start working around, playing with the, adjust this stroke, put it back here, change that, maybe play around with the push and pop functions in P5. Things like that. So that's just one thing to be aware of. And again, my students generally get confused with this, at least at first. Um, because again, for all the other shapes we use fill, but for the line we use the stroke functions. And again, if you have no stroke, it cancels everything out after, because it gets rid of the the lines, um, and that's there. The next thing is more advanced, but it's also not that hard once you get into it. So these are where we can make custom shapes. And basically, what we do, I'll make a really simple one here. Um, is we have begin shape, uh, and end shape. You have to have both of these because when P5 sees begin shape, it's going to look to find end shape and know when to stop drawing the shape. So if you don't have it end shape here, you're going to run into a lot of problems. But in between that, we have the function Vertex. And this, we can just put in the arguments here are the coordinate locations for um, each point of the shape we want to draw. So maybe 100, 100. We didn't see that pop up because it's under the green line. Um, I'm going to put 4 here, and maybe we have 300, 100 here. Notice it's starting to fill in the shape as I go. 100, 300. And, I don't know, 400, 200. I don't know. Anyway, I'm picking some stuff out, but you can customize whatever you want. And maybe we'll make this a different color. Yeah, just so we can easily tell things apart. I'll put that outline back to really small. But notice that, again, the shape is filling in the order that we put the various vertex functions. So we can change the order and change the shape. So I'll just put the last one here. That actually didn't make a difference. So let's put it like here. Anyway, and we start getting different combinations and things like that. So you can really set, the various shapes that you want. With Vertex, this is going to be the one I focus on for my students, but it is a point at each corner of the shape. There are other functions that we can use. If I just go into the reference here, and we scroll down to shape, here we are. So again, we get vertex, and we can set up things with curve, vertex, and contours, and things like that. Then you can get really, really custom shapes to really fine tune exactly what you want. For the purposes of this class, I tell my students that these exist, but I really only go into vertex, just because this is a whole thing where you could spend, weeks on making, just this stuff. So again, I tell them that it exists, but only say, you can go out and check it out on your own, depending on what you want to do for your projects. So you have that there. I'm going to actually put this stroke weight, make it a little thicker again. And you'll notice that the last line of this shape does not have a stroke. And there are 2 ways to go about doing this. The first is, because we're just connecting all these points, if you put the very first vertex identically to the very last one, it'll connect to the same point, and the shape will get filled in. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But in shape, there's another argument we can add, close, and that will automatically close up the shape. So whatever the last coordinate is, the last vertex here, it will automatically connect in a straight line to the coordinates of the first vertex. So I prefer doing it like this, just because it saves a line of typing. It's a little less redundant. We aren't saying the same things multiple times. And I think it's just a little bit clearer exactly what's going on. We're following this path and closing off the shape. And that's just a custom shape. Again, I have my students practice with these as we go. Yeah, here's a little practice assignment. I want to move on to the next lesson, because these are 2 kind of relatively short ones. And this is working with color. So up until this point, we have utilized colors as a string. And I've got some of this on the screen right now. And that being, say, like, we type out in quotation marks the name of a color we want to use. This is fine, and I've got this here. And that's how we're setting up all this stuff. That's great, but it's not the best. All right, it could be better. And the reason for that is that these names are preset into your web browser. All right, there's a series. There's about 145, give or take a few, of these preset colors like this. And you can use any of them however you want. There's nothing wrong with that. However, you can't change what they are. Like, light green is always going to be this same, and this old lime green here. Pink is always going to be that pink. Coral is going to be there. I personally think the brown is kind of atrocious, but you know, you can't change it. These are preset values. If you want to change it, that is when we can start calculating the RGB values. And that's just the amount of red, the amount of green, and the amount of blue making up the color. This is what we call additive color synthesis. Essentially, you start with no color, meaning zero for all your RGB values. Um, no color, that is black, uh, and these values go all the way to 255. And that is all of the color. And as you have all of the color, you eventually get white light coming out of your monitor, which is just, well, all the colors and even mixture. And then by adjusting that balance between those three number ranges, you can set up whatever you want to have. So uh, there's that. Where's the Yeah, I have a link here to the color calculator, um, the same one shown in the image, and we can. I like this one because we can click. Oh, I thought we could click on here. But here's the color example. You can see the RGB right there. We can also see it represented in hexadecimal code, which if your students like working with the hex representation, that's totally fine. I don't go into it. I stay in the RGB just for consistency, and because I don't do as much stuff in the base 16 things unless I have to. But you would just, instead of saying these numbers in our fill function, you would put in the hex value as a string. But this is fun because you can go in and change these, or you can adjust it. Well, I thought you could. Maybe they changed it. Okay, yeah, there it went. But you can change these as a slider, but these kind of seem a little bug. There we go. Um, but you can kind of click and drag and set up. Maybe I want a little bit more blue. We have it there. If we set all of these to 0, we get all black. If we set all of them to 255, we get all white, like I was saying. So by customizing all of these colors to be exactly what we want, we can get, well, exactly what we want. But as opposed to 145, again, give or take one or two, preset our colors, you can get a little over 65 million colors as options. Now, personally, if I was to put this at and if they're all the same and anything else, it's a grayscale. So let's make it there. I personally can't tell the difference between the 172 and 173. Maybe if I was looking at them right next to each other, I might, but it's they are technically different, and the computer can calculate and display those differences, even if the human eye can't quite tell them apart. So there are many, 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 many options, and basically I make my students do the RGB for a bit, and then I say as long as it's the colors we're looking for, I don't really care. They can pick and choose what they want. But I'll make sure that they know it because it is important for setting up colors in other coding aspects. So there's a color calculator linked in this lesson, so you can check that out. Or if you just Google, RGB color calculators, you'll find a ton of options. Um, and use that same one. And so basically, what you would do is just say fill, and instead of typing in the string, you would just give it those three numbers as arguments to create that. So let's make that same one. It was 186, 132, 135. So we can say here, I'll use it on this big shape, 186, 132, 145. I kind of ballparked towards the end, but 35. Again, slight difference there, but now we've got this very custom shade of off pink for our shape, and we can adjust any of these. You could just store it in a value or a JSON object and adjust it to have the color change in real life. Just to illustrate that really quick, let so we could say bloop, 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 R colon 186 comma green colon 132 and 135. So we have all these values, and we can say in our fill, my color dot R, my color dot G, dot blue. Or did I goof? Oh, there we go. And boom, we get the same thing, but now we can adjust it, and maybe my color dot R, and I'll do it the same thing as here. Why not? Um, but I'll change this to 255. But now we can see that the color of this shape is gradually changing as we go. There's definitely a jump as we move around to that really blue shape, but basically we're just gradually looping the amount of red that is present here. Um, a few things to note. Again, we have the three numbers, and it is always red first, then green, then blue. RGB. That's why it's got that the name. It's always that order. So whenever we're talking about colors, it's always RGB, red, green, blue. I personally don't have one, but if you've got a little mnemonic device for remembering that, that might be a good idea for introducing this to your students. But again, the amount of red, green, and blue in kind of gets mixed together and makes a shade of color. All right, so again, I've got a little practice example. Just some questions, things like that. Over here, though, okay, this is saying how you can change it. There's different ways you can change it. I just use the objects, but you can just use variables and things like that. As long as the value changes, then we've got changing colors. You can pack it together again as an array, which is also kind of useful. So I'll do that for. I'll make a little rectangle at the bottom here. So I'll put that right there, and we can go in and we can represent our color as an array. Let my other color, we can just, as the array, give it those three values. So maybe, there's that. And we can just say, fill my other color. And boom, now I've got this green shape. And we can set that up right there. Basically, what's happening is my other color is just filling in the first three elements of this array into the fill. So that's generally, this could be a very useful way to store your colors if you know that they aren't going to change. If they are going to change, I recommend doing something like this with the JSON notation, just so you can manage all of the colors individually. All right. So again, then I've kind of got that set up right there. And you can also set it up using the color function. That's kind of up to you. So a few things. I mentioned this before, but again, just with fill, giving fill two values will give it a kind of a gray scale. Or no, it's just one argument. I'm sorry. Using one argument, we can go between 0, none of the color, or 255, all of the color, or white along a gray scale. And I've got this set up here so you can kind of see as I move my mouse, it kind of moves along that gray scale of the circle. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Again, we use this color scheme here with the default background 220, and we can adjust that along a grayscale. Where's my background? Here it is. Um, Here, so maybe I wanted it to be a black background. Boom, there it is, 0. Maybe I wanted it to be white, 255. Boom, there we are. Maybe I wanted it to be kind of dark gray. Well, now there we go. We can set it for whatever we want. Excuse me. There's a lot of pollen today as I record this. Um, so we can set up along the grayscale. Another thing we can do is set an alpha value for our RGB colors, and this is a fourth argument that we can add to our fill functions. And you notice these have 4 on some of them, and basically this is a transparency value. So as we kind of move it along, you'll see that these top shapes are transparent and they're following my mouse. So as I move them across the other shapes, you can still see the other circles uh, beneath them. And this is a useful little tool to have. So I'm going to make my shape up here, my custom shape, have that. So that's using there. So we can say A for alpha, I don't know, 100. And we can just go down here, my color dot A. And boom, now it's kind of transparent. And you can set this to be whatever you want. You can have it change just like any of the other values. It's just, again, 0 is none of the shape appearing. So you can, 0 transparency, the shape is completely hidden. Versus 255 is all of the shape. You can see it. It's completely opaque. You cannot see anything through it. And then anything in between that is a range of more to less transparent. So that's another useful little tool. And then the last thing I have on this page is just, again, you can make, I said 65 before. That's the next range. But a lot of colors. But 16 million is kind of the basic with here as we get. I was thinking of my fancy computer monitors that I have and where I'm recording this, and though the 65, that's like the next level up in terms of amount of colors it can render. But 16 million is still a lot, and again, adding in that fourth value just really changes it up. So basically, what I do when I'm done with this lesson is let my students, try to make as close as they can to these colors without using the color mixers or the presets to try and get something like this. And I give them vaguely, like you can tell what the color is, but it's still kind of vague. So let them get as close as they can. Um, and then lastly, I then go the opposite way of, okay, here's some RGB. Now describe the color that it makes, or RGBA, I should say, and they don't match up. So that's a fun little way to practice this. You could combine it with the shapes stuff in the previous lessons, so that way they're making shapes and now they're applying colors to their shapes. It kind of depends on what you want to do. So the very first graphics assignment, that's the next thing, and it's going to have its own video, so I'm not going to go too much into it now. But basically, this is an assignment that we have that if you've gotten through to this point, your students can definitely do it. I tend to give them this one in the fall, relatively early on, but it can you can tweak it and change it. If you do it in the like a spring semester or a dual enrollment semester, this is generally like the very first thing, like a welcome back from winter break. Here's a review assignment, and have them make all the shapes. So again, there's different ways you can do it. It's designed to be the first thing, the first big assignment ish of the project. So we have that there. The next section. So I'm going to basically go through some of these assignments here, but the next section is on kind of interacting with these shapes and drawings, and I'll have separate videos for that for probably both all of chapter 5. I'll have in a video, and then a separate one for the Paint app. So you can stay tuned for those. But again, those will be separate videos, and this will be things like measuring the boundaries of some of the more common shapes, having a move, being able to interact with them, things like that. And that's gonna kind of wrap it out from here. So if you enjoyed the video, definitely like, comment, subscribe, all the boring YouTube stuff. If you have any questions about anything I talked about today, definitely put those in the comments below. I again read the comments and respond as necessary. And if there's anything that you would like to see me cover specifically, please go ahead and also put that down in the comments. If I can make a video on it, I will, and I will stick that into the viewer suggested topics playlist on the main YouTube channel. That's going to be it for me. Everyone have a great day, and I will see you all the next time that I see you. Bye.